Doctor has stood at the landing platform, watching the human base grow larger through the transport ship's window. The medic's four eyes blinked in sequence as they studied the military installation below. It looked rough and temporary, nothing like the clean medical facilities back on The transport touched down with a heavy thud, has picked up their medical equipment case with two of their four arms and stepped out onto the planet. The air smelled of smoke and chemicals. In the distance, they could hear the sound of weapons firing. A human in military uniform walked toward them. He was tall for a human, with dark hair cut very short and a long scar running down the left side of his face. His uniform had the rank markings of a captain. "Dr. Has?" the human asked, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. Has touched the hand briefly with one of their smaller arms. "Yes, I am the medical exchange officer from the Institute." "Captain Ho," the human said. His face showed no emotion. "Welcome to Forward Operating Base Titan. I'll show you to the medical facility." As they walked through the base, Has observed everything with professional interest. Humans moved quickly between buildings, many of them carrying weapons or equipment. Some had visible injuries, bandages on arms, limps in their walking, scars on their faces. Yet they continued working. "You have wounded soldiers performing duties?" Has asked, pointing at a human with their arm in a sling who was loading supplies onto a vehicle. Captain Ho glanced at the soldier. "Private, he's fine, just a broken arm. He can still work." Has's antennae twitched in confusion. On my world, such an injury would require rest and regeneration therapy. "We don't have that luxury here," Ho said simply. Don't stop attacking because someone broke a bone." The medical facility was a large tent with hard walls on some sides. Inside, human medics moved between beds where injured soldiers rested. The equipment looked primitive to Has's eyes. No cellular regeneration pods, no neural healing units, just basic surgical tools and chemical medicines. A young human woman in medical uniform approached them. She had her hair tied back and her sleeves rolled up. Her hands were stained with something that looked like blood. "Captain," she said, nodding to Ho. Then she turned to Has. "You must be the doctor. I'm Corporal Wu, Chief Combat Medic." "A pleasure," Has said, studying her. She was small, even for a human, and looked very young. "You are in charge of medical operations." "For field work, yes," Wu said. She gestured around the tent. "This is what we have. I know it's not fancy alien technology, but it keeps our people alive." Has wanted to say that their technology was not fancy, but simply advanced and logical. Instead, they said, "I am here to learn your methods and offer assistance." "Good," Ho said. "You'll start tomorrow. Wu will show you where you're staying." He turned and left without further conversation. Wu smiled slightly. "Don't mind the captain. He's seen a lot of combat. He doesn't talk much." She led Has toward a smaller tent. "This will be your quarters. It's not much, but it's safe." Over the next few hours, Has settled into their new quarters and reviewed human medical files on their data pad. What they read confused them greatly. The humans suffered injuries that would permanently disable most species, yet they returned to duty within weeks or even days. One file showed a soldier named Dongmin who had lost 3 fingers on his left hand. 2 months later, he was back on active duty. Another file showed a soldier called Ah who had suffered a severe concussion. She was commanding troops again after just 10 days. "How is this possible?" Has muttered to themselves. A loud explosion shook the tent. Has jumped up, their 4 arms spreading wide in alarm. Outside, they could hear shouting and the sound of warning sirens. Has rushed out of their tent. Humans were running in organized patterns toward defensive positions. Wu ran past, carrying a large medical bag. "What is happening?" Has called out. "Attack," Wu shouted back. "Stay in the medical tent. We'll bring wounded to you." But Has was a doctor. They could not hide while others suffered. They grabbed their medical equipment and followed Wu toward the defensive walls. The scene was chaos. Humans crouched behind barriers, firing weapons at enemy forces in the distance. Explosions lit up the darkening sky, and in the middle of it all, wounded soldiers kept fighting. Has saw a human soldier. His uniform tag said Dong Min, directing other soldiers. His arm was bleeding badly from shrapnel wounds. Yet he continued shouting orders and pointing at enemy positions. Wu ran to him and began treating his wounds without making him leave his position. She worked quickly, wrapping bandages while Dong Min continued his work. "You need to go to the medical tent," Wu told him firmly. "After we stop this push," Dong Min replied, wincing as she tightened the bandage. "My squad needs me here." "You're losing too much blood." "Then work faster," Dong Min said, and went back to coordinating his soldiers. Has stood frozen, watching this impossible scene. By all their medical training, this human should be in shock. He should be unconscious. At minimum, he should be unable to function. Yet here he was, wounded and bleeding, still commanding his troops. Wu saw Has standing there. "Doctor, I need help. There's a wounded soldier behind that barrier." Has moved on instinct, their medical training overriding their shock. They ran to where Wu pointed and found a young human woman lying behind a concrete barrier. She had been hit by shrapnel in the leg. "Can you stop the bleeding?" the soldier her tag said Bin asked calmly. Too calmly, she should be screaming in pain. Yes, Has said, opening their medical case. They applied a coagulation gel from their own supplies, something far more advanced than human bandages. "Thanks," Bin said. She tried to stand up. "No, you must not move," Has said in alarm. "I have to get back to my gun," Bin said. "We're holding this section." "You are injured. You will cause more damage." Bin looked at Has with an expression the alien doctor could not understand. "Doc, people are counting on me. I can rest when the shooting stops." She limped back to her position and began firing her weapon again. Has remained crouched behind the barrier, their 4 eyes wide with disbelief. Nothing in their medical training had prepared them for this. Humans did not follow the logical rules of biology. They simply continued. The battle raged for 3 more hours. Has worked alongside Wu, treating wounded soldiers who refused to stop fighting. They saw humans with broken bones, burns, and deep cuts who kept performing their duties. They saw soldiers drag wounded friends to safety while injured themselves. When they finally retreated and the base fell quiet, Has stood in the medical tent surrounded by wounded humans. All of them were talking, some were laughing, and several were arguing about when they could return to duty. Wu collapsed into a chair next to Has. "Long night," she said, exhaustion clear in her voice. "How?" Has asked. "How do they continue? The pain alone should incapacitate them." Wu looked at the soldiers around them. "Pain is just pain, doctor. It tells you something is wrong, but it doesn't mean you stop. We're still needed, so we keep going." Has looked down at their 4 hands. They were shaking. In one night, everything they knew about medicine had been challenged. These humans were not stronger than other species. They were not more durable, but somehow they simply refused to stop. "I do not understand," Has said quietly. Wu smiled tiredly. "You will, doctor, give it time. You'll figure out what makes humans different." As Has looked around at the wounded soldiers who were already planning to return to duty, they wondered if they would ever truly understand these strange, stubborn creatures called humans. 3 days had passed since the first attack, and Has was beginning to understand human medicine. It was not that humans had better technology or superior knowledge. They had something else entirely. They had methods designed for soldiers who refused to die. Has was in the medical tent studying a container of human painkillers when the explosions began. This time they were closer, louder, and more intense. The entire tent shook. Equipment fell from tables. The lights flickered. Incoming artillery, someone shouted outside. Wu burst through the tent entrance. Major attack, they're hitting us hard this time. She grabbed her medical bag. Doctor, we need to prepare for mass casualties. Before Hez could respond, the first wounded arrived. 4 soldiers carried a stretcher with Sergeant Dong Min on it, the same soldier from 3 days ago. This time, his injuries were far worse. Shrapnel had torn through his right side and blood covered his uniform. Put him here, Wu directed the soldiers to a table. She immediately began cutting away his uniform to assess the damage. Has moved to help, their medical training taking control despite their fear. They could see that Dong Min had injuries to his liver and possibly his right lung. By standards, he should be sedated immediately and placed in a regeneration pod. Without such technology, he might not survive. But Wu was already working with human methods. She injected him with something, then began manual surgery right there in the tent while explosions continued outside. Dong Min, Wu said loudly, stay with me, can you hear me? I hear you, Dong Min said through gritted teeth. His eyes were open. He was conscious during his own surgery. I need to remove the shrapnel. It's going to hurt. Do it, Dong Min said. Then he looked past Wu to someone else in the tent. Private, what's the status of second squad? A young soldier near the tent entrance called back. They're holding the east wall, Sergeant. Good. Tell Lieutenant Ah that if the push through Sector 3, she should fall back to secondary positions. You're giving tactical orders, Has said in disbelief. You are being operated on. Someone has to coordinate, Dong Min said, then sucked in a sharp breath as Wu pulled out a piece of shrapnel. The lieutenant is busy on the wall. Wu worked with incredible speed and precision. Has assisted, handing her tools and using their medical gel to help seal wounds. Despite the primitive methods, Wu's hands never shook. She worked as calmly as if they were in a peaceful hospital instead of a tent being shaken by explosions. Done, Wu said finally. Has, stay with him, keep him stable. I have to check on other wounded. She ran out before Has could protest. Has looked down at Dong Min. The human had just major surgery with only local anesthetic. His face was pale and sweating, but his eyes were alert. You should rest, Has said. You have lost much blood. Later, Dong Min said. He tried to sit up. No, Has pushed him back down with 2 of their arms. You will tear your stitches. Doctor, my squad. Your squad has other leaders. You must heal. Dong Min looked frustrated but stayed down. How bad is it? You should be dead, Has said honestly, or at least unconscious. Your species is confusing. Despite his pain, Dong Min smiled slightly. First time working with humans in combat. Yes. You'll get used to it. More wounded arrived. Has spent the next hour treating injuries that should have been impossible to survive. A soldier named came in with severe burns on his arms. He had been manning an artillery gun when it exploded. While Has treated him, asked repeatedly when he could return to his position. You cannot return, Has said firmly. Your hands are badly burned. But I can still pull triggers, argued. I don't need my hands to be pretty. I need them to work. Wu returned and checked burns. Give it 2 days, she told him. 2 days, the battle will be over by then. 2 days, or I'll have the captain confine you to the medical tent. Muttered complaints, but accepted the decision. Has pulled Wu aside. 2 days, his burns need weeks to heal properly. We don't have weeks, Wu said quietly. And honestly, if we tell him 2 weeks, he'll just leave after 3 days anyway. At least this way, he'll actually rest for 2 days. This is madness. This is war, doctor. An explosion hit very close to the medical tent. The structure shook violently. Has instinctively crouched down, protecting their head with their arms. When they looked up, they saw that all the humans had barely reacted. Wu had steadied a tray of medical instruments. The wounded soldiers had simply gripped their beds and waited for the shaking to stop. "Don't worry," Wu said. "The tent is reinforced. It takes a direct hit to bring it down." "That is supposed to comfort me." Wu smiled. "Welcome to Fob Titan." More wounded came in. A soldier named Ah arrived and has recognized her from the files they had read. She was a lieutenant, and she had her left arm bent at an angle that made Haz's antennae curl in sympathy. "Broken," Wu said after examining the arm. "I know," Ah said calmly. "I felt it break. Can you splint it?" "You need surgery to set it properly." "No time, just splint it. I have to get back out there." "Lieutenant." "Corporal Wu, that's an order. Splint my arm so I can hold a weapon." Wu's face showed anger and resignation at the same time. She created a quick splint that immobilized Ah's arm. "At least take these painkillers." "Can't they make me fuzzy? I need a clear head." Ah stood up, tested the splint, and nodded. "This will work, thank you, Corporal." She walked out of the tent, heading back to the battle. Has stared after her. "She will damage the bone further. It will heal incorrectly. She may lose the use of that arm permanently." "I know," Wu said quietly. Her voice was sad. "But if she doesn't go back out there, more people might die. She made her choice." "How can you accept this?" "I don't accept it, Doctor. I hate it. But this is what humans do. We calculate the cost. One arm permanently damaged versus 10 soldiers who die without her leadership. She chose to pay that cost herself." Has thought about this. In culture, injured warriors retired with honor. They did not sacrifice their bodies for the group, but humans seem to have a different calculation entirely. A private named Bin staggered into the tent, supporting another soldier. Both were wounded, but Bin's injury looked worse. Her side was dark with blood. "Bora needs help," Bin said, lowering the other soldier onto a bed. "She got hit by shrapnel." Wu rushed to Bora and began treatment. Has went to Bin. "You are also wounded. Sit down." "Bora first. She's hurt worse." "You are both hurt. Sit down now or you will collapse." Reluctantly, Bin sat. Has examined her wound. A piece of metal had cut deep into her side, possibly damaging her kidney. This human should have been unable to walk, let alone carry another soldier. "How did you carry her?" Has asked while working. "You should not have been able to move." "I just did," Bin said, as if the answer was obvious. "She needed help, so I helped her." "But the pain." "Pain is just pain, Doc. You can feel it and still move. You just push through it." Has carefully removed the metal fragment and sealed the wound with their advanced medical gel. "You pushed through pain that should have made you unconscious." "Should have, but didn't," Bin said. She looked over at Bora. "Is she going to be okay?" "Wu is skilled. Your friend will survive." "Good, we've been on the same squad for 2 years. Can't lose her now." The battle continued outside, but the flow of wounded soldiers began to slow. Has worked non-stop alongside Wu and the other human medics. They learned that human medicine was not about having the best technology. It was about keeping broken bodies functioning long enough to finish the fight. As the sun began to rise, the artillery fire stopped. They were pulling back again. Has stood in the middle of the medical tent, looking at rows of wounded humans. Some slept. Some talked quietly with each other. Some were already asking when they could return to duty. Every single one of them should have been more seriously affected by their injuries than they appeared to be. Wu sat down heavily next to Has. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and blood on her uniform. "Another successful night," she said with dark humor. "Successful," Has gestured at all the wounded. "Look at these injuries, this is success." "Everyone's alive, Doctor. That's success in my book." Has was quiet for a moment. "I do not understand humans. You endure pain that should be impossible. You fight with injuries that should be disabling. You risk permanent damage for temporary advantage. Why?" Wu looked at the sleeping soldiers. Because if we don't, they win. And if they win, everyone back home suffers. So we endure, we fight. We push through pain and injury and exhaustion because someone has to. This is not logical. No, Wu agreed, but it's human. Has thought about this long after Wu fell asleep in her chair. These humans did not have superior bodies or advanced medicine, but they had something else, a will that refused to break, even when their bodies should have failed them. For the first time, has began to understand why the Galactic Coalition valued humans as allies. They might not be the strongest or the most advanced, but they simply would not stop. Had been at Forward Operating Base Titan for 2 weeks now, and their understanding of human medicine was completely changing. They spent the morning in their quarters, reviewing medical files on their data pad with growing confusion and fascination. Private Jinwoo had returned to active duty after losing nearly half of his blood volume in an ambush. Any other species has knew of would need months of recovery, if they survived at all. Jinwoo was back on patrol after 3 weeks. Captain Ho's file was even more impossible. The record showed he had been declared killed in action twice. Once, his heart had stopped for 4 minutes before human medics revived him. Another time, he had stopped breathing for 7 minutes. Yet here he was, commanding the base with no apparent brain damage or physical limitations. A soldier named had been crushed under debris, breaking 6 ribs and puncturing 1 lung. She was back to light duty in 5 weeks and full duty in 8. The medical science had studied their entire life could not explain these recovery rates. Dr. Has, a voice called from outside the tent. Enter, Has said. Wu came in, carrying 2 cups of the hot brown liquid humans called coffee. She offered one to Has. Thought you might need this. You've been staring at those files for hours. Has took the cup with one hand while gesturing at the data pad with another. I cannot understand this. These recovery rates are not possible, not with your medical technology. Wu sat down across from them. What do you mean? Jinwoo should have died from blood loss. At minimum, he should have permanent organ damage, yet he shows no long-term effects. How? We gave him a transfusion and fluids, standard procedure. That is not sufficient. The shock to his system alone should have caused lasting damage. And Captain Ho, he was clinically dead, twice. How does he function normally? Wu sipped her coffee thoughtfully. We resuscitated him, got his heart beating again before permanent damage occurred. 7 minutes without oxygen. His brain should be severely damaged. But it's not, Wu said simply. Look, doctor, I don't know the science behind it all. I just know that humans are stubborn. We don't die easy. Our bodies keep fighting even when our brains say it's over. Haz's antennae drooped in frustration. That is not a scientific explanation. Maybe not, Wu admitted, but it's the truth. She stood up. Come with me, I want to show you something. They walked through the base to a training area where soldiers were exercising. Has immediately spotted Jinwoo among them, running with full equipment on his back. The human was sweating and breathing hard, but he kept pace with the others. He nearly died 3 weeks ago, Has said. He should still be resting. He rested for 2 weeks. Now he needs to rebuild his strength, Wu explained. If he stays weak, he's a liability to his squad, so he pushes himself. They watched as the soldiers finished their run. Jinwoo bent over, hands on his knees, gasping for air, but he was smiling. A young woman jogged up to him, Has recognized her as Private Bora. You're getting slower, old man, she teased Jinwoo. I almost died, give me a break, Jinwoo shot back, still smiling. Excuses, excuses. The casual way they talked about near-death experiences disturbed Has, but before they could comment, an alarm sounded through the base. Not the attack alarm, something different. Medical emergency, a voice called over the speakers. Medical emergency in Sector 4. Wu immediately started running. Has followed, their 4 legs carrying them quickly across the base. They arrived at a barracks building where soldiers had gathered outside. Captain Ho was already there, looking grim. "What happened?" Wu asked. "Bora," Ho said. "She collapsed during equipment check. She's inside." They rushed into the building. Bora lay on the floor, her skin pale and covered in sweat. She was conscious but clearly in distress. Strange dark lines spread across her skin like tree branches. Haz's medical training immediately identified the pattern. Biovenom. How was she exposed? "She was on patrol yesterday," another soldier said. "She reported a scratch from some plant life. Didn't think it was serious. Has felt their entire body go cold. Biovenom was engineered to kill most species within hours. Humans were not immune. In fact, according to galactic medical databases, it was 100% fatal to humans." "We need to get her to medical immediately," Has said. "Wu, help me carry her." They got Bora to the medical tent and onto a bed. Has immediately began scanning her with their medical device. The readings confirmed their worst fears. The venom was already in her bloodstream, spreading to major organs. Wu pulled out human antivenom. "Will this help?" "No," Has said quietly. "Human antivenom is not designed for biotoxins. This is. I am sorry, but this venom is lethal to humans. Always." "Always?" Wu's voice was sharp. "There's no treatment." "The venom breaks down cellular structure at the molecular level. I have seen it kill other species in hours. For humans," Has checked their database. "The galactic medical records show no human has ever survived exposure." Bora stirred on the bed. "Not dead yet, Doc," she said weakly. "You must rest, save your strength." "For what? Dying takes strength now." Despite the situation, Has appreciated the human spirit. They prepared to make Bora comfortable in her final hours, administering pain medication and monitoring her vital signs. Captain Ho arrived at the tent. "Status." "Fatal," Has said quietly. "I am sorry. The venom is too advanced for any treatment we have available." Ho's face showed no emotion, but his hands clenched into fists. "How long?" "Hours, perhaps less." The captain walked to Bora's bedside. "Private, you've served with honor." "Not planning on dying today, sir," Bora said. Her voice was weak but determined. "With respect." "That's the spirit, fight it." Ho Has said gently. "Fighting will not help, the venom is." "Let her fight, doctor," Ho said firmly. "That's what humans do." Over the next hours, Has monitored Bora closely. The venom continued to spread. Her vital signs weakened. By all medical knowledge Has possessed, she should have died within the first 2 hours. But she didn't. 4 hours passed. Bora was still alive, still conscious, though clearly suffering. The dark lines on her skin had spread further, but they seemed to have slowed. "This is impossible," Has muttered, checking their instruments again. Wu was also monitoring the readings. "Her heart rate is stabilizing. Is that good?" "It should not be stabilizing, it should be failing." Has took another blood sample and ran it through their analyzer. What they saw made no sense. "Her immune system is adapting." "No, that cannot be correct." 6 hours passed. Bora fell into a deep sleep, but her vital signs held steady. The dark lines on her skin stopped spreading. 8 hours passed. The lines began to fade slightly. Has sat beside Bora's bed, staring at the medical readouts. They had been trained in medicine, widely considered the most advanced in the galaxy. They had studied hundreds of species and thousands of toxins. Nothing in their education explained what they were witnessing. "She's fighting it," Wu said softly. "Her body is actually fighting it." "That is not possible," Has said. "The venom is designed to be lethal. Evolution cannot adapt in hours. It takes generations." "Tell that to Bora." By the next morning, Bora woke up. She was weak and exhausted, but alive. The dark lines had faded to faint marks on her skin. Has took another blood sample with shaking hands. The analysis was clear. Bora's immune system had developed antibodies to the biovenom. Her body had literally evolved a defense in less than 24 hours. "How do you feel?" Has asked. "Like I got hit by a transport ship," Bora said. "But I'm alive, that's what matters." Wu burst into tears, surprising everyone. She quickly wiped her eyes. "Sorry, I really thought we'd lost you." "Takes more than some poison to kill me," Bora said with a weak smile. Has left the medical tent and found Captain Ho outside. The captain looked tired but relieved. "She's alive," Has said. "I do not understand how, but she is alive." "That's good news, Doctor." "You do not understand. This should be impossible. The venom was lethal. 100% fatal according to all medical records. Yet her body simply adapted, created defenses that should not exist. How?" Ho looked at the alien doctor. "You've been here for 2 weeks, Doctor Has. You've seen us take injuries that should kill us. You've seen us fight through pain that should disable us. You've seen us recover from wounds that should be permanent. And you're still surprised." "Yes, because it does not follow any logical biological model." "Maybe humans don't follow your models," Ho said. "We evolved on a death world, Doctor. Earth tried to kill us with predators, diseases, poison, weather, and disasters. The humans who survived were the ones whose bodies refused to quit. We passed that stubbornness down through generations. It's in our DNA now." "Stubbornness is not a medical trait." "For humans it is." Ho turned to leave, then paused. "Do you know what the first rule of human medicine is, Doctor?" "What?" "Never tell a human something is impossible. We take that as a challenge." As has watched the captain walk away, they thought about everything they had witnessed. Humans recovering from fatal blood loss, surviving clinical death, fighting through disabling injuries, and now adapting to a bioweapon that should have been completely lethal. Wu joined them outside. "You look confused." "I am beginning to understand," Has said slowly, "that humans are not medically remarkable because of your technology or your knowledge. You are remarkable because your bodies simply refuse to accept death." "That's about right," Wu agreed. "How do I write this in a medical report? How do I explain that humans survive through sheer willpower?" Wu smiled. "You could just write that humans are too stubborn to die properly." Despite their confusion, Has found themselves making a sound that might have been laughter. These humans were impossible, illogical, and completely fascinating. And Has was beginning to understand why the galaxy should be very careful about making enemies of them. The morning sun was barely up when Has found Captain Ho in the base cafeteria. The human was drinking his coffee and reviewing reports on a data pad. Has approached with their own morning beverage, a nutrient solution that tasted like flowers. "Captain, may I join you?" Has asked. Ho gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Of course, Doctor, something on your mind?" "I want to understand," Has said, sitting down carefully on the human-sized chair. "I have been here for 3 weeks. I have seen things that contradict everything I learned in medical school, but I still do not understand the why. Why do humans push so hard?" Ho set down his data pad. He was quiet for a moment, looking at his coffee cup. "Do you know much about Earth, Doctor?" "Only what is in the basic files. A Class 4 world, high-gravity, dangerous wildlife." "That's the scientific classification," Ho interrupted. "But it doesn't capture what it's really like. My grandmother used to tell me stories about when she was young. There was a war in her country. She was only 10 years old. She saw her village burned. She walked 200 kilometers to safety with no food and barely any water." Has's antennae curled in sympathy. "That is terrible." "She survived," Ho continued. "Then my father grew up during a famine, not enough food for everyone. People died. But my father survived by eating things most species would consider inedible: roots, insects, tree bark, whatever he could find. Your family has suffered greatly." My family is just one family, doctor. Every human has ancestors like this. We come from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us. Predators, disease, starvation, whether other humans, everything was a threat. The humans who survived weren't the strongest they were the ones who simply refused to die. Ho sipped his coffee. That refusal is in our blood now, it's in our culture. When we're hurt, we don't ask, can I continue? We ask, how do I continue? It's not bravery, doctor, it's just how we're built. Has thought about this. On the life was orderly and safe. The strongest survived by being more efficient, more intelligent. Earth seemed to have created survivors of a different kind entirely. Thank you for explaining, Has said. I think I am beginning to understand. Over the next few days, Has made an effort to spend more time with the human soldiers, trying to understand them beyond their medical files. They joined Sergeant Sang, a veteran with gray hair and more scars than skin, during a meal. Dr. Has, Sang greeted them warmly. Join me. The food's terrible, but the company is good. Has sat down, saying, may I ask you a question? Sure. I have read that you have served in the military for 22 years. You have been injured 14 times, twice severely. Why do you continue? Sang chewed his food thoughtfully. You ever hear about the human concept of one more round, doctor? No. In fighting sports on Earth, matches are divided into rounds. When a fighter is exhausted, hurting, maybe losing, their coach might say, give me one more round, just one more. And the fighter finds the strength to continue for one more round. Sang smiled. That's how humans fight wars. Every species fights until it makes sense to retreat. We fight one more round past that. That seems inefficient. Maybe, but it wins battles, Sang leaned back. They are stronger than us. Better weapons, better armor, more soldiers. By logic, we should lose, but we keep fighting one more round. And eventually, they're the ones who retreat. Later that day, Has encountered Private Na, a combat engineer who was working on defusing unexploded mines near the base perimeter. Has noticed she was moving slowly, and her skin had an unhealthy color. No, are you well? Has asked. Just a little radiation exposure, doctor, Na said, not looking up from her work. She was carefully examining a mine with her scanner. Got too close to a power cell yesterday. I'll be fine. Radiation exposure is not something to dismiss. You should be in medical. These mines need to be cleared, doctor. If I don't finish, someone else has to do it, and they might not be as experienced. They might make a mistake and get killed. Na carefully cut a wire on the mine. So I'll finish my work, then I'll rest. The radiation is making you sick right now. I know, I can feel it. Na moved to the next mine. But sick doesn't mean unable to work. I can push through for a few more hours. Has watched her work, marveling at the human ability to simply ignore physical distress in favor of duty. Why is this work more important than your health? Because my health only affects me, Na said simply. But if these mines aren't cleared, they could kill dozens of people. One person suffering versus many people dying. That's an easy choice. That is not logical self-preservation. Na smiled slightly. Humans aren't really built for self-preservation, doctor. We're built for group survival. Individuals sacrifice so the group continues. That's how we survived long enough to reach the stars. That evening, Has was called to the medical tent. A patrol had been ambushed and several soldiers were wounded. One of them was Private, the same soldier who had suffered burns weeks earlier. This time, he had taken shrapnel to both legs. Wu was already treating him. Doctor, I need your gel for these wounds. They're deep. Has quickly applied the medical gel while Wu worked on stopping the bleeding. Was conscious and calm, despite the severity of his injuries. How bad is it, doc? Asked. Has examined the wounds carefully. The left leg will heal fully. The right leg has damage to the muscle and possibly the bone. You may walk with difficulty even after healing. But I can still walk. Eventually, yes, with physical therapy. Then I'll be fine, said. As long as I can still carry a weapon and stand at my post, I can still serve. You do not understand. You may have permanent pain, permanent limitation of movement. Shrugged, then winced at the motion. Pain is just pain, doctor, and limitation just means I have to work harder. I've seen soldiers serve with worse. I'll manage. After finishing with, has found themselves alone in a corner of the medical tent. They were thinking about everything they had learned when Wu approached with 2 cups of coffee. You look like you're having deep thoughts, Wu said, handing 1 cup to Has. I am thinking about pain, Has said. In medicine, pain is a signal to stop. It tells the body that damage is occurring and must be prevented, but humans seem to view pain differently. Pain is information, Wu said. It tells us something is wrong, but it doesn't make our decisions for us. We can acknowledge pain and still choose to continue. That seems to require tremendous mental strength. Maybe, or maybe we're just used to it. Wu sat down beside them. Humans have been dealing with pain for millions of years, doctor. Physical pain from injury and illness. Mental pain from loss and hardship. We learned that pain is temporary, but giving up is permanent. But the physical damage will heal or it won't. Either way, we deal with it. Wu sipped her coffee. I think the thing that confuses other species about humans is that we separate physical condition from ability to function. Just because a body is damaged doesn't mean the person is done. Has thought about this. On my world, damaged individuals rest until they heal. It is logical and efficient. It is logical, Wu agreed. But sometimes logic isn't enough. Sometimes you need people who will fight even when logic says they should stop. That night, the base came under a major assault. It was the largest attack since Has had arrived. The alien doctor worked for 47 hours straight, treating wounded soldiers as they came in. They used human methods alongside their own technology, learning to combine both for maximum effect. They saw soldiers who should have been unconscious from their injuries still providing tactical information. They saw wounded soldiers helping to carry other wounded soldiers to medical. They saw humans who had been treated hours earlier asking to return to duty. Wu worked beside Has the entire time, never resting. When Has finally insisted she take a break, Wu refused. I'll rest when the battle's over, she said. Right now people need me. You are exhausted, you will make mistakes. Then I'll be very careful not to make mistakes. Wu moved to treat the next patient. Besides, you've been working just as long as I have. Has realized this was true. Somewhere during the long hours, they had stopped questioning human methods and had simply joined them. They had absorbed the human philosophy, keep working because someone has to. When the battle finally ended and they Has collapsed into a chair, their 4 legs ached, their arms trembled from exhaustion. They had never worked so hard or so long in their life. Wu sat down in the next chair. She looked ready to fall asleep where she sat. You did well, doctor, she said quietly. You kept pace with human combat medics. That's not easy. I had no choice, Has said. People needed help, so I helped them. Wu smiled. Now you're thinking like a human. As Has sat in the quiet medical tent, surrounded by exhausted but alive soldiers, they realized something profound. They had not just learned human medicine. They had learned the human spirit, the refusal to stop, the determination to continue, the willingness to suffer so others would not have to. For the first time since arriving on this violent world, Has felt they truly understood what it meant to serve alongside humans. And it was both terrifying and inspiring. The warning came at dawn. Has was in the medical tent, restocking supplies, when Captain Ho called an emergency meeting. All available personnel gathered in the command center, a reinforced building at the center of the base. Our intelligence has confirmed a major offensive, Ho said, his voice calm despite the serious news. They're sending everything they have. 3 full battalions supported by heavy armor and air units. They'll hit us within 12 hours. A lieutenant named Minho spoke up. What are our numbers, sir? We have approximately 400 combat-effective personnel, though we'll have nearly 1,200. In addition, they have superior firepower and air support. The room was silent, as did not need advanced military training to understand what these numbers meant. The humans were badly outnumbered and coalition reinforcements, someone asked. 3 days away, Ho said. Command is ordering a general evacuation. Transport ships will arrive in 4 hours to extract all personnel. Has felt relief. Finally, humans were following logical military doctrine. They would retreat, preserve their forces, and return when reinforcements arrived. But then Sergeant Sang spoke. Captain, if we evacuate, they will take this position. They'll use it to launch attacks on the civilian settlements in the valley. Thousands of people will die before coalition forces can respond. Ho nodded. That's correct. Then we can't evacuate, Sang said simply. That's what I thought, Ho replied. He looked around the room. Command has given us permission to evacuate, but I'm asking for volunteers to stay. We need to hold this base for 3 days until reinforcements arrive. I won't lie to you, the odds are not good. Many of us probably won't survive. Anyone who wants to evacuate has my full support and no judgment. Has expected most of the humans to choose evacuation. It was the sensible choice, the logical choice. These soldiers had already fought bravely. No one could ask more of them. But Lieutenant Ah stood up. I'm staying, sir. Then Private Jinwoo, I'm staying. Corporal Wu, I'm staying. One by one, every human in the room volunteered to stay. Not a single person chose evacuation. Has felt their antennae trembling. This is madness. You cannot hold against those numbers for 3 days. Ho looked at the alien doctor. Probably not, but we have to try. Doctor, you should evacuate. This is not your fight. I am a doctor, Has said, surprising themselves. Where there are wounded I must be. I will stay. Something like respect showed in Ho's eyes. Welcome to the last stand, doctor. The next hours were spent in frantic preparation. Soldiers checked weapons, reinforced defensive positions, and said goodbye to the evacuating non-combat personnel. Has prepared the medical tent for mass casualties, knowing it would not be enough. Wu worked alongside them. You should have evacuated, she said quietly. So should all of you. We're protecting civilians. What's your excuse? Has thought about this. I have spent weeks watching humans refuse to quit. I have learned your medicine, your methods, your philosophy. If I evacuate now, I learned nothing. Wu smiled sadly. You really are starting to think like one of us. The attack began at exactly noon. Artillery shells rained down on the base with overwhelming force. The entire structure shook with each impact. Has crouched in the medical tent, wondering if this was finally the end. But the tent held. The reinforced walls absorbed the impacts, and when the artillery stopped, the sound of human weapons firing filled the air. The first wounded arrived within minutes. Private, who had been injured so many times before, was carried in with shrapnel wounds to his chest. His breathing was labored, his face pale. Again, Wu said as she began treatment, you need to stop getting hurt. I'll work on that, said with a weak smile. More wounded came. The flow never stopped. Has and Wu worked frantically, treating injuries, stabilizing patients, and sending soldiers back to fight as quickly as possible. Every person counted in this desperate defense. Sergeant Dongmin arrived with burns across his arm from an energy weapon. While Wu treated him, he used his communicator to coordinate defensive positions. Sector 3 is holding, he reported to someone. Tell them to watch their left flank. You are being bandaged, Has said. Stop working. Can't stop, doctor. My people need direction. By evening of the first day, the medical tent was full of wounded. had worked non-stop for 12 hours. Their hands shook from exhaustion. They had used up most of their medical supplies. Wu looked no better. She had bags under her eyes and moved with the slowness of extreme fatigue. But she kept working. "How much longer can we do this?" Hez asked. "2 more days," Wu said. "That's how long we need to last." The night brought no relief. They attacked in waves, never giving the humans time to rest. Hez witnessed things that night that would stay with them forever. Sergeant Sang came in with a broken leg. While he set the bone and created a splint, Sang directed his squad remotely. No, pull back to the secondary line. Don't try to hold that position." Private Nu arrived with severe burns and radiation poisoning from destroying an energy weapon. She was barely conscious, but she smiled at Haz. "Did the job, Doc. Took out their biggest gun." Lieutenant Ah came in with a head injury, blood streaming down her face. She refused to lie down until Wu physically forced her onto a bed. "My soldiers need me," Ah protested. "Your soldiers need you alive," Wu snapped back. 5 minutes, rest for 5 minutes. Morning of the second day arrived. Hez did not know how many casualties they had treated. 50, 100. They had lost count. All they knew was that humans kept fighting. Captain Ho visited the medical tent. He looked tired but determined. "Status report, doctor. We have 63 wounded being treated, 22 critical cases, 4 soldiers have died." Hez's voice was hollow. "We are running out of supplies. I do not know if we can last 2 more days." "We have to," Ho said simply. He looked around at the wounded soldiers. Many of them were conscious, watching him. "You've all fought bravely. 1 more day. Give me 1 more day and reinforcements will arrive." A soldier with both arms bandaged spoke up. "We'll hold, Captain." Others nodded in agreement. These humans, wounded and exhausted, still agreed to fight. The second day was worse than the first. They pushed harder, sensing the humans' weakness. More wounded arrived at the medical tent. Hez treated injuries they had never seen before. They improvised with human supplies when their own ran out. They learned to do emergency surgery with human tools. Wu collapsed briefly but refused to stop working. Hez tried to make her rest, but she shook her head. "Too many wounded. I can rest later." "You will collapse completely if you do not rest now." "Then I'll collapse, but not yet." That evening, disaster struck. An artillery shell hit close to the medical tent. The explosion threw Hez across the room. When they recovered their senses, they felt pain in their left side. Looking down, they saw one of their arms was badly injured, possibly broken. Wu rushed over. "Doctor, are you hurt?" "My arm," Hez said. The pain was intense, worse than anything they had felt in their sheltered life. Wu quickly examined the injury. "It's broken. I need to splint it." "I cannot work with only 3 arms." "Then work with 3 arms," Wu said firmly. She created a quick splint. "You've been telling us humans all month that we should stop when we're injured. Well, doctor, now you know how it feels. And you know what we do, we keep going." Hez stared at her. The pain was incredible. Every movement sent sharp agony through their body. But they thought about Dong Min giving orders while being operated on, about Ah leading troops with broken bones, about every human they had treated who had pushed through pain to continue fighting. "Yes," Hez said quietly, "we keep going." They stood up and returned to treating patients. The pain did not go away, but Hez learned what humans had tried to tell them all along. Pain was just information. It did not control their actions. The third day began with the worst assault yet. They threw everything at the base in a final, desperate push. The sound of battle was deafening. The medical tent filled beyond capacity with wounded. Hez worked through the pain in their arm, through exhaustion that made their vision blur, through fear and doubt and despair. Beside them, Wu did the same. Around them, wounded soldiers helped treat other wounded soldiers. Private Bo-Ra, the soldier who had survived biovenom, worked with one arm bandaged, helping to carry supplies. With multiple injuries, organized the wounded soldiers into groups so treatment was more efficient. Even critically wounded soldiers found ways to help. At midday, when Has thought they could not continue for even one more minute, the sound of coalition ships filled the sky. Reinforcements had arrived. They began retreating immediately. The battle was over. Has collapsed into a chair and could not move. Their entire body shook from exhaustion and pain. Around them, human soldiers were also collapsing, finally allowing themselves to rest. Wu sat down next to Has. Neither of them spoke for a long time. "We did it," Wu finally said. "We held for 3 days." "I did not think it was possible," Has admitted. "By all logic, we should have failed." "Humans don't give up easily, Doctor. You learned that." Has looked at their broken arm, then at the tent full of wounded but alive soldiers. "I learned more than that. I learned that strength is not just physical. I learned that we can overcome biology. I learned what it means to be human." Captain Ho entered the tent. He looked at the wounded soldiers, at the exhausted medical staff, at Has with their splinted arm. "You all did the impossible," Fob Titan held. "It was not me," Has said. "It was all of them, every soldier who refused to quit, every wounded person who kept fighting, every human who chose to stay when they could have evacuated." Ho smiled slightly. "You stayed too, Doctor. That makes you one of us now." 2 weeks later, Has stood in front of a communication screen, delivering their report to the medical institute. Their arm was healing slowly in a cast, but they could work. "My findings," Has said to the assembled scientists, "are that humans are not medically exceptional by any physical measure. Their healing is moderate. Their pain tolerance, while high, is explainable by their evolution. Their medical technology is generations behind our own." The scientists looked disappointed. One asked, "Then what makes them effective soldiers?" "Will," Has said simply. "Humans have weaponized will itself. They have evolved to continue functioning past the point where biology demands they stop. Pain does not stop them. Injury does not stop them. Even death sometimes does not stop them quickly enough. They fight not because they are strong, but because they refuse to be weak." Has pulled up images from the battle. For 3 days, 400 humans held against 1,200. This should have been impossible. By every logical calculation, they should have been overrun in hours. But humans do not follow logic when it interferes with their goals. They simply continue. "What is your recommendation?" another scientist asked. "If humanity is your ally, trust them absolutely. They will hold when no one else can. They will fight when everyone else has retreated. They will find a way to survive the unsurvivable." Has paused. "But if humanity is your enemy, surrender quickly, because humans do not stop when it is logical to stop. They stop when they are done, and humans are never done." The communication ended. Has turned off the screen and looked out the window of their quarters at forward operating Base Titan. Humans were rebuilding the damaged sections, preparing for the next battle. Wu entered with 2 cups of coffee. "Finished your report?" "Yes, though I do not think they truly understood." "Most species don't." Wu handed Has a cup. "You staying here at the base?" "Yes," Has said. "I have requested a permanent assignment with the Human Defense Force." "Really, why?" Has looked at their broken arm, then at Wu. "Because I learned what it means to be part of a group that never gives up. I learned what it means to push through pain for a greater purpose. I learned that sometimes the most advanced medicine is simply refusing to let your patients quit." "That's very human of you, Doctor." "Thank you," Has said. "I consider that a compliment." That evening, the base held a small ceremony for the soldiers who had died defending it. 4 names were read, 4 lives lost. It was a tragic number, but also a miraculous one. Only 4 dead out of 400 defenders in an impossible 3-day battle. As the ceremony ended, Sergeant Sang raised a glass. To those we lost and to those who survived. The soldiers echoed the toast, has raised their own glass, feeling strange and honored to be included. Captain Ho approached Has. Doctor, I heard you're staying with us. Yes, I have much more to learn about human medicine. You already learned the most important lesson. Ho smiled. You learned that humans are too stubborn to know when we should quit. Has made their clicking sound that indicated amusement. I learned that it is not stubborn, it is not ignorance, it is humanity, and humanity is the most powerful force I have ever witnessed. As the celebration continued around them, Has understood their journey was just beginning. They had come to this base as a superior alien scientist studying primitive humans. They were leaving as a combat medic who understood what it truly meant to serve alongside the most relentless species in the galaxy. And Has had never been more honored to be part of something in their entire life.